established. I simply want to lift up the thought and use a historical reference for this part of the discussion. When H.R. Haldeman died, his diaries were made public in 1969. He quotes a conversation with the president at that time, President Richard Nixon, who says the fact that we must face is that the problem really is the blacks. The key is to devise a system that addresses this problem without appearing to do so. When Sandy Hook occurred, we met with the Joe Biden task force and we began to look at the issues around gun violence. And we talked about gun control, and I don't know about you, but I'm not sure gun control is where our real problems are with gun violence in our communities. Matter of fact, most of the people that get guns in our communities don't go the legal route to get them anyway. And so if we change the gun policy, it doesn't impact the number of children with blood coming in the streets. But I bring this up for one reason, that when we began to talk about this, is first of all, why is it that when Sandy Hook happened, the whole nation was upset?
Right.
When 20 children were killed, and I think we should be upset, don't get me wrong, but I'm just not understanding why when 500 children in Chicago and 476 children in Los Angeles get killed, no one said anything. So when we met with the Joe Biden task force in the Department of Justice, we began to raise the question about why aren't we addressing urban violence, and he simply said we don't want to address urban violence right now. Now here's the paradigm I want to drop on you. I'm going to suggest to you that we are at the end of the second Reconstruction in America. And if you understand to understand that statement, to understand that context, we have to understand the end of the first Reconstruction. At the end of the first Reconstruction, there was an election in 1876, and in that election there were two candidates, Samuel Tilden and Rutherford B. Hayes. And there were 20 electoral votes that were still outstanding. At the time, Rutherford Hayes had 165 electoral votes and Samuel Tilden had 184. And those 20 might sound familiar, Ohio and Florida as two of the main three. And there was a concession made. There was a meeting and an agreement that we'll give you, Rutherford Hayes, will give you the 20 electoral votes, thus allowing you to be president only on one condition, and that condition is that you remove the troops from the South. And that's what happened. And when the troops were removed from the South, that ushered in the Ku Klux Klan, black codes, and mass incarceration. A funny election and a shift in policy. Now here we are, fast forward almost 200 years later. John Julio writes a document in 1994 called The Rise of the Super Predator. And what he says in this document, he says that we have noticed that children of African American descent have inherently become more violent. And the best thing that you can do is lock them up and throw away the key. And what that ushered in is a policy whereby we began to try children as adults. It also was a time in which we began the process of 3 strikes. And I might add, there was a questionable election between Bush and Gore.
Yes.
One won the popular vote and one won the electoral college. What am I saying? What I'm simply saying is we're not paying attention to the time. We miss out on what's about to happen. And so since 1994, we've seen California become the 3rd largest prison industrial complex in the world. Where are we? So we cry and complain about these issues, but we have a hard time organizing policy.
Yes, and implementation.
So I'll suggest to you that our churches in the African American community is the only real institution that we have, and institutions speak to only other institutions. So we can't go up upset with a narrative, but we have to also have an analysis that speaks to this problem of the marginalization of our children. Every day our children walk the streets traversing areas that they're trembling with fear.
Right.
But we have this thing called coping mechanism that keeps us from stopping and we continue on. But when our children are afraid of getting killed, it's no wonder that we have high dropout rates, that the options of solving problems always tend to be around violence. We have mass incarceration that's growing out of control. And then we act surprised. The issue is that we have to address, the fact is that our children are not safe when they go to school. Our children do not feel safe, and if we do not address this problem, we'll continue to see the same things that we've always gotten. The question is, what is the prophetic response of the church? And hopefully, we'll get to talk about that during the rest of this time that I'm here.
Okay, thank you.